I'm down here at one of our parish's cemeteries, St. Paul's Cemetery next to Riverview. Each year we come down here to the cemetery before Memorial Day, formerly called Decoration Day, and on All Souls Day as well, on November 2nd, to visit our deceased family members and loved ones, even those we didn't like so much. We come here though to visit them, to remember, and to pray for them. You know, anthropologists like to note that one of the things that sets humans apart from the rest of God's creatures is that we take care of our dead differently than the squirrels or the cats or the ladybugs do. Archaeologists looking for evidence of human settlements often look not only for foundations of buildings, but also burial grounds. So, burial mounds, catacombs, the pyramids, even the Taj Mahal are all honored places for the dead. Although cemeteries are often considered creepy or they're portrayed as being scary places, the Christian approach to them is very different because Jesus' body spent time in one. But not much time, of course. He was raised in 3 days. So, for us who know that we will one day die, but hope in the resurrection, the grave is a sign of hope, even as it claims our mortal bodies. So cemeteries are hopeful places, full of loved ones. Now, if you visit a cemetery and you don't quite know what to do or what to pray, you could always rely on the church's order for visiting a cemetery, which is a group of prayers that can be found, among other places, in the Book of Blessings, but also in the iBreviary app under Prayers. And actually, the history of Christian pilgrimage is specifically related to visiting tombs and cemeteries. The big one is, of course, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, built over the empty burial place of Christ. But secondly, the tombs of the apostles and of the martyrs have been very popular places to visit. St. Andrew in Patras, Greece, St. James in Compostela, Spain, and of course there's St. Peter's in Rome. Now, underneath this church of St. Peter's are the remains of the previous church building, and under that is the cemetery in which St. Peter was buried. Each mausoleum in this cemetery was carefully built and decorated as places where whole families would eventually be buried. At the western end of the road of Mausolea is St. Peter's tomb, and directly above that tomb is nowadays the main altar of the basilica. When visiting, it's very easy to look down the stairs in front of the altar and see down towards Peter's burial place. Generally, Christians have preferred bodily burial to any other treatment of our deceased, though necessity sometimes requires other arrangements. In fact, the last of the corporal works of mercy is to bury the dead. This is an important duty of the living toward the dead, including being described in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Tobit. But over the past 50 years, cremation has become a more common choice for people when they die, both non-Christians and for Christians as well. In fact, the National Funeral Directors Association reports that since 2016, in the United States, the rate of cremations has passed the rate of bodily burials, so more than 50% each year. Though cremation is not the preference of the church, it is not forbidden. I'll quote the church's funeral texts. Although cremation is now permitted, it does not enjoy the same value as the burial of the body. The church clearly prefers and urges that the body of the deceased be present for the funeral rites, since the presence of the human body better expresses the values which the church affirms in those rites. Namely, that death is not the end, and that this person's body will one day live and walk again, just like Lazarus, just like Jesus. Sometimes, however, it is not possible for the body to be present at the funeral mass, when extraordinary circumstances make the cremation of the body the only feasible choice. We must be sensitive to this. Regardless, the cremated remains of a body should be treated with the same respect given to the human body from which they come. The cremated remains should be buried in a grave or entombed in a mausoleum or columbarium. The practice of scattering cremated remains on the sea, from the air, or on the ground, or keeping cremated remains in the home, are not the reverent disposition that the Church requires. Whenever possible, appropriate means for recording with dignity the memory of the deceased should be adopted, such as a plaque or stone which records the name of the deceased. So there's a bit of a loss of the symbolic nature of the body going into the earth to rise out of it again, like Jesus did and like Lazarus did, and that he promised we would do. But more importantly, one result of this cultural shift toward cremation is that instead of performing the rituals surrounding death and burial within a reasonable period of time, they become delayed. In our day and age, it seems that only the Jewish people have retained their custom of doing things timely after death. They are fastidious with their custom of completing everything for the dead, including burial, before the next Sabbath, before the next Saturday. On the other hand, I have had funerals months after the person has died, sometimes even having other masses offered for the deceased before their own funeral. The virus, of course, has caused this to happen too. But in my opinion, the most problematic result of cremation is that cremated remains are sometimes left behind, abandoned, or forgotten at funeral homes. Funeral homes everywhere have people's remains in a room or a closet, and this is something that would never happen with a body in a casket, of course. Now, there are some groups that try to rectify this situation. For instance, the Patriot Guard Riders contact funeral homes to collect the unclaimed remains of veterans for burial in a national cemetery. But we as Christians, we also have the responsibility to fulfill the final corporal work of mercy, to bury the dead. In discussing this situation with people, I've discovered that we all sense that something important has been left undone. Something's been neglected and forgotten. So we're going to do something about it. At least for our own local abandoned deceased. We've adopted the remains from the funeral home, who have no one to care for them, and a couple of them have been there since the 60s, and we're going to give them the burial they deserve. We have dedicated a section of St. Paul's Cemetery here, on this hillside, just for cremated remains, section D46, D51, D56, in which we'll bury these deceased people that we're adopting. And anyone else who has cremated remains are welcome to arrange for them to be buried here as well. We have 2 people who have come forward already with people who have been cremated who need to be buried, and we're going to bury them all in one graveside service on Saturday, July 25th at 9 a.m. and place their stone markers as well. Everyone is welcome to come and join us and to come and help. And I'd like to thank the businesses that have already committed to helping with this important project. Tompkins Bluestone, Signs, etc., Cutler Landscaping, and of course the Henderson Beta Cap Funeral Chapel. If anyone would like to help us with this project or to make a donation to St. Paul Cemetery to offset the costs associated with these burials or of the stone markers, please contact our office. Finally, I'd like to thank the people, paid and unpaid, who are helping keep both this cemetery, St. Paul's, and a cemetery in French Woods, St. Francis de Sales, clean and respectable. This is a hard task, to keep up with the mowing and the maintenance, and more recently a nice group of people have taken to cleaning the gravestones for which there are no families left to take care of them. I know I am very grateful because, in its own way, this is a continuation of the corporal work of mercy, to bury the dead. Each year, May 1st is our cleanup day, and if anyone would like to help on that day, or on any other day, please don't hesitate to call. But first, make it a point to take care of your own family's stones and grounds, out of love for them. Especially as this is an open-air activity that could be even done as a family, this summer might be a good time to do it. I only ask that harsh products not be used on the stones or on the grounds, such as bleach, dish soap, or wire brushes. For advice on what to do, call the office and we'll put you in touch with the right people who can help, and to have the recommended cleaner, a product called D2. To end, let's use our traditional call and response prayer for the dead that we use at every funeral. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen. And may their souls and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.